We love talking about surveillance and all the ways AI is stealing our rights and privacy, and it doesn't end. We got one more story on that. Here we go. Today's Not So Critical update.
Yeah, as Mike said, another story. And it's got all of our favorite elements. It's got AI, it's got surveillance, and it's got law enforcement. So this is it's just a story about a prison or a state which asks for money to install a big kind of CCTV system with an AI aspect, which was that they could pick out particular keywords and stuff like that from it.
Is AI even a thing, Pete? Like, what is? It's all just machine learning, right? Is AI actually a thing? Artificial intelligence. What does that actually mean?
I mean, that's a whole. That's not just another show. That's an entire, like, novel. That's a dissertation. It's like a. This is what sci-fi authors write about, right? What is AI and
like intelligence is about reasoning and understanding. Can a computer ever? I mean, maybe if we get to like quantum computing, that's what that could unlock, right? Is the ability to make connections that are more ambiguous.
I don't think necessarily quantum computing might get us there faster, but I don't like the term AI because, right? Okay, because artificial intelligence is intelligence, right? And if it's intelligent, then it doesn't matter if it's artificial or not. The term artificial kind of bugs me a bit. People also talk about natural versus, artificial things or whatever. And as though like the evolution into robots isn't still evolution. I think that is nature. I think that's a purest expression of nature when we become cybernetic beings and upload ourselves to the cloud.
I like it.
That is still evolution, and therefore it is natural.
How have we not talked about this before? I like that.
Okay. Do you? Oh my god, I'm surprised. Mike likes something. He kind of agrees with me about something.
No, I totally agree. I like that a lot. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Well,
I'm kind of speechless. We'll have to go into that again sometime.
Okay, well, back to the story.
I know, I totally hijacked the story.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just dumb. The thing that really pissed me off about this is that they are surveilling, or they're taking videos of and recording audio of all the visitors to the prisons as well, and recording their conversations. And I don't think there's any kind of hint of like a waiver when you go in to sign to say, I give away all my rights. And all the people who are in the jails that are jail or prison. I don't know.
I think both. Two, right? I think both.
I don't know what.
Because at one point in the article, they talked about a sales email to some jail.
My point is I don't know the difference between jail and prison.
Oh yeah, neither
they are synonymous. Yes. Anyway,
I could speculate.
The people who haven't been convicted, right? So there's a certain argument to be made that prisoners themselves shouldn't expect any kind of right to privacy. Okay, I don't quite agree with that, but whatever. But more clear-cut is the people who have not been convicted of anything and people who aren't even suspected of being committing a crime are also under surveillance. And it sucks.
Yeah. It bothers me. So, like, you could make the argument that, well, like you said, they're prisoners. They've given up their right to privacy. You could make the argument that this is necessary to help keep them and the people who work there safe. It's always in law enforcement, though. Like, we see this over and over again. Like, oh, it's about stopping crime. It's about protecting the children. It's about all these things. Yeah. It just feels like a money grab.
Because it is. That's why. It is a money grab. It's so easy. It's difficult to attack something like this, isn't it? It's difficult to fight on the side, to argue that this is a bad thing. Because it might help some crimes being prevented. it's like the people who are fighting for the prisoners on death row, the Innocence Project, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And it's they have shown that there are people who have been executed who have later been proven innocent, and it's quite a significant percentage of the people who have been killed. And the Innocence Project is all about the people who are still on death row and trying to look into, the ones who claim that they're not guilty. And statistically speaking, some of them must be. So, but it's such a hard job. Can you imagine saying, no, I'm fighting for the people who've been convicted of murder, of serial rapists and serial killers, and to be an advocate for those people is tough, because nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody cares. These are criminals.
Yeah. Well, you started by saying it's tough to make the argument against this kind of application of AI, and so I kind of want to say it's actually not that hard an argument. The problem is nobody cares, maybe. I guess that's what you were saying.
Sorry.
Because really the problem is, and this is the problem with the probably entire prison system in the U.S., is we don't see it as a rehabilitative system.
Business.
Right. We see it as strictly a penal system that people get money from.
Did you hear the story about the prison who threatened to release their prisoners if they didn't get subsidies? Yeah, because they weren't making enough money from the few prisoners they had.
Sure.
They said,
what happens when you commercialize everything.
Yeah, we're going to have to release everyone if we don't get money from the government.
But we've seen story after story in the U.S. about corrupt judges getting kickbacks from the private prisons. The private prisons trying to keep prisoners from being rehabilitated, because the longer they stay in, the more they get paid for those filled beds. It's a horribly, horribly corrupt system. Not to mention the way our entire legal system is set up with like minor drug offenses and all that stuff. So, it's just terrible. And the AI surveillance, I guess, just is one more brick in the wall. But very, very frustrating. There were a couple things in the article, like they talked about the notifying guests and visitors. Court rulings have, according to the article, given U.S. authorities wide scope to use surveillance of prisoners' conversations as long as they're working to ensure safety and fight crime. Now, this is where it really goes off the rails. If that's all they were doing, like, this is the argument, right? Like, well, it's keeping people safe. It's preventing crime. Okay, it's hard to argue against that. But there's no way to figure out. So they're talking about guests, and they're saying that people, based on their conversations, are flagged and put onto specific lists. So one of the things they're looking for is gang activity. And they say in the article, law enforcement in Suffolk County had a history of erroneously labeling Latino men as gang members, and there's no way to figure out if you're on that kind of list or how to get off it, which feels like the no-fly list in the U.S. or the suspected terrorist list. The terrorist watch list, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's never been a list like this where they haven't had lots and lots of false positives. Getting off it is almost impossible. It causes all sorts of problems, and there's no transparency, and blah, 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 blah. It's just a go. Oh, and by the way, are we going to put bets on how long it is until there's a data breach and all these massive terabytes of video gets released to the dark web?
Who cares? It's just prisoner information. They don't
right.
They talk about in the article how the surveillance was expanded to monitor for information about viruses in the facilities, but not just to detect possible outbreaks. Authorities used Verus to identify phone calls in which prisoners vouched for the cleanliness of a facility, which they then used in a sales pitch to a jail in Cook County as a success story that would defend them against lawsuits. So they recorded a conversation. Prisoners said, no, they're doing a good job here. Then they could use that to defend themselves in a lawsuit. So they use that as a sales point to other jails to buy the same system.
This is a real life example. You know, on you go to the cookie consent thing. we may use your information, the information that you submit for advertising and marketing purposes. These are common consent forms that you have to tick on services and stuff. This is a prison doing exactly the same thing. They're taking prisoner conversation and using them for marketing and sales.
But they already know they're
bonkers.
not supposed to do this. The precedent is that they can do it for safety. These are cases where they're going well beyond that. They talk about another case where an inmate was recorded telling his father that the jail was covering up COVID, and the jail responded by sending out official notices to the prison staff well, he doesn't say what the content of the memo was. The implication was that they were trying to suppress that message from getting out, not that they were using it as a eye-opening revelation that they need to do a better job of, protecting the prisoners from COVID.
We've got to come up with some happier stories, Mike. This kind of stuff there's nothing good about any of this, is there? Nothing.
No, and even, for me, as one who will often argue that, like, oh, we don't have privacy, whatever. This is worse because these, they're being violated by the people who are entrusted to care for them. Mm. And, like you said, it's hard to make that argument about prisoners who are, convicted in prison. But if all you care about is monetizing them, then I guess this makes sense.
That's it. Come on. You come to the logical conclusion that capitalism always isn't good.
No, I am.
I can feel you almost getting there.
How do you mean? What do you mean? Getting where? Where do you think?
He's lost it. No, it's just. It's like your sort of brain is fighting against coming to the conclusion that we should not trust the free market all the time.
Oh, I don't trust the free market at all.
Well, I'm okay. Well, perhaps you're being a bit too convincing in your deadpan sarcasm when you're talking about it sometimes.
No, it's what my argument generally is like this is just what capitalism does.
Right.
Profit above all else. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? This feels especially egregious because it's, I guess it's degrees of separation, right? So on one hand, you've got a company trying to sell this technology into a prison system. Okay, that's pretty bad. Very predatory, opportunistic. They're assholes, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. They're assholes. The prison, however, maybe they say like, I can't give them the benefit of the doubt to say like, no, we really think this is a way to keep our prisoners safe and secure and to really, advance their rehabilitation. And it's too transparent. Like that's not their interest here. It's ridiculous. For-profit prison system. Like if companies, we talked about Blizzard, Activision, and the profit motive, like they think their CEO is going to make them more money than is going to cost them by getting rid of them, whatever. The stakes are relatively low there. If you're talking about criminal justice, healthcare, policing and prison systems, the fire department, the transportation system, certain things shouldn't be motivated strictly by profit because they're like private health insurance. I think is a good example. If your interest is in profit, but my treatment is going to cost you money, your interest is in me not getting the treatment that I need because that's going to cost you money. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think it's the same thing here with the prison system. If your interest is in rehabilitating me, but rehabilitating me means you stop profiting from me being here, that's not really your interest. You don't want me to be rehabilitated.
But then the question becomes, where is the line? What do we have fundamental rights to, and what don't we have fundamental rights to? I would go so far as to argue that everybody has the fundamental right to decent role-playing games. And I think that we should have international regulation to force companies to produce decent games because of the basic human need for entertainment. So,
Yeah. We should
that
spin up a government body to oversee that, certainly.
some people might argue that's maybe going a bit too far. I don't think so. Probably, we can have a discussion about that. But where is the line? Healthcare,
it's not
education,
where it is now. It's not where it is now.
Right.
Not where it is
that's
now.
where the whole socialism thing comes, right? People get upset
Yeah.
about socialism, communism, and all that, and then not in my backyard. It's good. Do you like my American
Is that
Southern
what
accent?
that is?
I'm holding a rifle here, like a 12 gauge.
Okay. I thought you were cradling
like
a baby or
rifle.
something. I mean, very similar, I guess. For some of those
Yeah,
people.
some people. But like seriously, that's where it all gets. It very very quickly devolves into that argument, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the pendulum's going to swing, right? I think you see it with like the Me Too movement, right? In some cases, did people get overzealous? Yeah, but for decades, the pendulum's been on the wrong side of the equation. So if it swings back a little too far and to where I'm comfortable with, like, okay, that's fair enough, right? You get that.
Yeah, that's absolutely always been the way I think about it. Is that it's been this is perfect, this is good, this is neutral, where everybody's equal and we're all treated fairly, and it's been like this for a very long time. And now there's going to be a correction, but it's going to be an overcorrection.
Sure, absolutely.
But that's okay. That's fine.
Absolutely. So let's have that debate. So let's start with healthcare and prisons and public utilities, and if it goes too far beyond that, then we'll have a conversation about where's enough. I'm in for that.
I think basically what we should do is when I become Supreme Emperor, what I'm going to do is go back and revisit all the episodes of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver and implement every suggested idea that he has from that show, because I think he's sort of bang on about pretty much everything. He's done loads of stuff on prisons and healthcare and just lots of really interesting things.
So
he needs to do a show on the state of online role-playing games, though. That's a must.
Issue.
Yeah.
Last week, I hosted a panel discussion with you and Paul Vixie, and the thing that really stood out to me was the idea that so many of these technology conversations are political.
Yeah.
And, somebody might come in and say, hey, leave the politics out of it, just talk about the technology. These technologies are inherently political. I don't think you can talk about the technology without talking about the politics.
There was a really interesting comment on Twitter, and actually the same guy on Twitter posted on a human rights mailing list. There's a part of the ITF working group is called the Human Rights Protocol Considerations, and what they do is they evaluate the aspects of internet standards in the context of human rights. And this guy Stefan is quite an opinionated guy. And he wasn't very nice about what me and Paul Vixie said. He was like, "Oh, very disappointed, very dumb thinking from supposedly intelligent people to say, well, encryption itself is inherently political." And he actually said that DNS over HTTPS is political, but then any protocol is. And I thought about this quite a lot, even though I didn't like his tone. I was a bit offended that he called me dumb. But I did think about what he was saying. And I think, because there's the other version is DNS over TLS. In a nutshell, the big difference is that DNS over HTTPS tries to blend in with web traffic and appear as though it's normal internet web traffic. But DNS over TLS is not pretending to be anything other than what it is, and it's easily blockable. And I feel like that approach is trying to be as apolitical as possible. It's not taking a stance on anything. It's taking a non-stance. By allowing your opinion to be disregarded, you're saying you have a right to your own opinion and do what you like. By trying to pretend that this technology is something else, by hiding itself, you are trying to prevent other people blocking your activities, if you know what I mean. So DNS over HTTPS is political, but I think there are parts of it. So it's back to my original point. I am going to bring this back. to answer your question right now, I think there are things which try and stay away as far away from politics as they can.
And just to summarize, the where this got political is DNS over HTTPS, DOH, is more secure, more private. The issue is it's not detectable, so it would force governments and corporations to take more extreme measures to try and lock down free speech than giving them the option to do it with something that's more transparent as DOT or DNS over TLS.
Yeah, that's part of it. But the other part of this particular thing is that the push for adoption of DNS over HTTPS was kind of political in a corporate way, if you know what I mean. It was the politics of it, were that certain companies benefited from that technology being adopted, despite some of the downsides of it, because they were able to retain control over metadata, even though it was an encrypted version of an existing protocol being put into place, because they were the people that ran the centralized servers which handled the lookups. DNS, for anybody who's watching and doesn't know what we're talking about, DNS is like the phone book of the internet. You use it to look up the IP address of a domain name. So you go to example.com, it goes to 123.567. Blah, blah, blah. There you go. Everything you need to know about DNS.
Right. And a pretty deep tangent, but
yeah, right.
Just to the idea, I think that like technology, there's always, I mean, I guess you just would say everything is political, right?
Well, yeah, that's
you can't separate that from technology.
Yeah, but that was what I was trying to answer earlier, which is to say that there are parts of technology which try and avoid being political if they can. And the only way they become political is because of the fact that they're avoiding political. They're avoiding taking a stance, which in itself is kind of taking a stance sometimes.
But it's not about you trying not to be political. It's about how your technology is used by people for political ends.
Well, kind of. The DOT in this scenario is saying, hey, I'm encrypting internet communication, but you can block me easily, and then that should be the end of the conversation. But it keeps the end user informed of the situation, because if it is blocked, then they will know. And it doesn't force anybody to step up their game with regards to intercepting traffic and doing deep packet inspection and all sorts of other nasty stuff. It's a long conversation, mate. I don't know if we should keep going with this.
and I don't know how long we've been going, because we didn't start the timer for the episode. Yeah. So God only knows how long this conversation actually will end up being. But
all right,
it's definitely, I mean, we should talk about it more for sure. We'll just maybe not right now. So.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.